Hello, my name is Paul Jenkins, Managing Director of UK Packaging Innovation Consultancy, ThePackHub, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Simon Lewis, Vice President of Marketing at Highcon. Hello, Simon, how are you today?
I'm fine, thanks, Paul. Hello there, how are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. So first of all, can you tell me a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, I've been at Highcon since the 1st of January this year, so I'm pretty fresh in the company. The previous 14 years, I was with HP Indigo, where I had a series of roles in product marketing and strategy. Then I was responsible for Print OS, and then I managed a sub-region in Europe, Central Eastern Europe, and Middle East and Africa as well. So a lot of experience, and I started my experience in the graphics world at Cytex in 1994, when Cytex meant digital prepress and doing all the things that we do today in Adobe Creative Suite without thinking, but then it was done on the proprietary workstations, and Cytex ruled that world.
Excellent, brilliant. And I was at an exhibition a few years ago, and everyone was gathering around the exhibitor from Highcon, and everyone was really impressed with this particular piece of digital execution. So tell me a bit more about Highcon. I mean, you are aware of you from the early days of the ThePackHub. I mean, just tell me a bit more about what Highcon does.
Sure. So Highcon was founded in 2009 by two gentlemen who left HP Indigo with a dream of helping the final frontier of end-to-end digitization and trying to deliver digital finishing to the world. And their focus was cutting and creasing. Mm-hmm. And they made a very far-reaching decision right at the beginning that they were going to use lasers to cut, but that the creasing would be done with what we call digitally driven mechanical creasing, which meant that we would use a 3D printing technique to write the creasing rules that would then, crease each sheet. And the reason to do that was that you wanted to get a real crease that wasn't going to destroy the integrity of the package. Yes. If you use a laser to do a half cut instead of a crease, what you're doing is you're weakening the material rather than simply creasing the material, compressing the material to make it fold better. And that was, I consider, a brave decision, but it was by far the right decision because it brought together the best of digital and the best practice in creasing to complement the laser. And they started with that very early. And basically since then, the company's been engaged in, I call it, perfecting, improving, accelerating that process and working on everything around it. Because we all know digital isn't just about what happens in the machine, but it's what happens around the process. It's about the workflow, it's about the automation, it's about the quality control, it's about the data and the measurements and so on. So Highcon has been doing all of that. And today, Highcon has a portfolio of products that works for primarily folding carton and corrugated, both packaging and point of sale or point of purchase displays. And it does exactly those things. It cuts and scores or creases cardboard and corrugated board up to 4 millimeters. And it does so at speeds of up to 5,000 sheets per hour. And this is really an industry where the up to matters because the laser is very powerful and very fast, but at the end of the day, the amount of power you need to cut one sheet is a function of the total circumference to be cut, the total length of the cutting lines, and the thickness of the substrate. The thicker the substrate, the more energy you need. The more energy you need, the slower the beam moves. And the beam moves remarkably fast, and watching it is kind of miraculous. And lasers are expensive, so you have to try and get it right and get the most out of it. But that's what we do. And today, we have some pretty amazing customers, primarily in North America and Europe, Greater Europe. I don't know whether the UK considers itself as Europe anymore. But what I'd call Britain and the European Union. And they're doing this and really making the most of the technology.
So I guess Highcon came along and sort of transformed this process. I mean, it had never been done
So,
before.
Paul, I don't want to be arrogant about this. To say we've transformed the process would be way too presumptuous. We're still a small player in a large industry. We all know what technology adoption curves look like.
Yes.
It doesn't happen overnight. There is a long cycle. So we've got about 70 units out there in the market. Quite a lot of the first 50 went into businesses that were more like commercial printers and who were exploring the same kinds of DNA that was an early adoption of digital printing, was an early adoption of Highcon. And they can do some pretty cool things, and they do a lot of very exciting cuts or specialized work, very high value. The problem with high value work like that is there's not a lot of it out there. And in the last couple of years, the focus has shifted more to classic converters in the folding carton and corrugated space. And for them, we are increasingly becoming an important part of the mix. But this is a moment for me to stress something that I used to say for years that I was at Indigo, which is that Indigo isn't, at Indigo I said we're not looking to replace conventional printing. We're looking to coexist and find value next to it. And Highcon is not looking to replace conventional die cutting. It's looking to bring value for the places where conventional die cutting has limitations. Fast turnaround jobs that don't have an existing die. Small quantities where you don't want to set up the whole die maker to run a small run. Complex jobs where the die can be very expensive, whilst there's a fixed cost for a Highcon job. There are all kinds of things, and we're still just scratching the surface. So you go to our most successful customers, and we have a customer in the United States that has installed the first unit, has a second unit about to go in, and has placed an order for a third unit because he filled up the first unit so quick, and he sees he's got lots of work. But he's a web-to-pack business. He's getting lots of this short run, fast turnaround work. He doesn't want to think about die making and queuing jobs for the die maker. He wants to take the jobs in, he prints them digitally, he finishes them digitally, and he ships them. And the turnaround time is fast, the minimum order quantity is 1, and it makes sense. And although you don't have to use digital printing to work with a Highcon, with technology agnostic, inkjet of every kind, and toner, dry or liquid, and flexo and offset lithography. But in many ways, the sweet spot is to combine digital printing with digital finishing. Because if you don't do the digital printing, if you use digital printing and don't do digital finishing, essentially you're not maximizing the value of the digital printing revolution. And digitization, when it's end to end, with automation, with all the power that it brings, is really powerful, and it can transform businesses, and it can transform the way their customers work, because all of a sudden the whole dynamic of order quantities and order frequency and how much you keep an inventory and so on can change, and it gives degrees of freedom that really weren't there.
Excellent. So you talk about digital transformation. I mean, I've certainly seen in the time at ThePackHub how digital is really starting to get noticed and be used more across the whole print and packaging industry. I mean, can you talk to me a little bit more about the sort of journey from analog to digital in terms of what's happening?
Yes. If we think, first of all, the print industry is such an important part of what makes the world go round. And for all the incredible availability of information at our fingertips, and on my phone, you can't see the phone because of the virtual background, print has an important place to play. Now, traditionally, the printing and the processes around it were constrained by limitations. It was expensive. Setup was desperately expensive. The waste in setup was crazy. And that's why print jobs was, small print jobs were once upon a time unaffordable, and they become eminently affordable. Analogs got better at doing them. Digital has opened up new possibilities. And it's about removing constraints. There is nothing better than offset lithography to run, the next best-selling book. because people like to read books on paper. And J.K. Rowling wouldn't have happened without printing. It would never have happened with manuscripts. It would never have happened with digital printing because it would have been too expensive. So the digital revolution is all about removing those constraints and creating new opportunities and new possibilities. And it doesn't come to supplant analog. It comes to offer people new possibilities. And that concept of new possibilities is incredibly exciting and empowering, because it's not defined from heaven that you can't have a minimum order quantity of one or whatever it may be. These were real life constraints. The digital revolution is about removing those and allowing people to go with their imagination. And I've seen in my years in digital that the sky is the limit means that actually your imagination is the limit. The customer who comes up with an innovative value proposition by taking those possibilities and putting them on a new application, on a new material, on a new something, opens up an enormous opportunity. And that's really what the digital revolution is about. It's not about competing with the past. It's about offering new opportunities in the present and the future.
Talking about the future, I mean, what kind of exciting things do you anticipate will change going forward for digital?
So I think that, when I think specifically about Highcon, we are on the cusp of having crossed the chasm. Geoffrey Moore's famous book about crossing the chasm talks about the difficulty of going from a few early adopters into something that becomes more mainstream. And I believe that at Highcon, we are kind of climbing out of the chasm from the other side, and the market is increasingly ready to embrace digital finishing, because the acceptance of digital printing and digital transformation in packaging was a long way behind commercial. It still is, but it's starting to gain real momentum, and COVID helped in that regard. And I think that we are now in the decade where we go from being a curiosity at the edge of the market to something that becomes an important part of the production mix of very many printing businesses. It's still a minority piece, but it goes from being an esoteric minority piece to being a material minority.
Okay, and talking of materials, but in a slightly different definition, what kind of materials can be used with the Highcon solution?
Okay, so Highcon officially says that we can work on paper-based materials. So we will not put on the spec and cut synthetics in the machine. There are other laser vendors who do, but we're worried about what happens when heat of the laser, the energy of the laser meets those materials, and whether you end up with drips or melts or so on that end up doing more harm to the machine than the good of the value of the job. And therefore, basically, paperboard, corrugated board, whether it's a single layer board or multi-layer boards up to the current limitation of 4 millimeters. There are some boards that work better than others, because at the end of the day, every paperboard is a mixture of materials, and some of those materials react more favorably or less favorably to the laser, so you get more singeing or less singeing. We call it haze on the substrate, and there are higher quality substrates that deliver better effects. We're now working with quite a number of suppliers to the industry who are looking to see how they can understand the physics and chemistry that's going on there to optimize their boards to minimize the effects. Because what they want to do is ensure that actually there are a broad range of very good materials out there that are available to our customers, so that it's affordable to work, to do a cross-section of jobs, rather than having to do premium boards, which sometimes people do, but then it raises the cost, and then what you gain from the digital finishing, you lose from the increased cost of the material.
And what kind of results have you delivered for clients then?
So we're getting some amazing results. Customers, there are the customers who say, will use a small range of boards that we know are very good, and that's what they offer to their customers. There are others who have a much broader range of boards. But for the customers who have the right kind of job basket, Highcon solves a problem. There was a book in the 80s called The Goal. The Goal is a book that looks at how you get more out of a factory. And the core hypothesis is that the most important parameter of a factory is the throughput, which is the amount you get out the other end. And that is determined by your bottlenecks. And the die cutter is normally a bottleneck. And the first thing you see in front of the die cutter is a pile of jobs waiting to be finished. And what we try and do is we try and redefine the capacity of the die cutting step in order to increase the capacity. And for the customers who have work and have the bottleneck and they put in the Highcon, like this customer I mentioned who will be onto their third machine by the autumn, they have the work and they're solving bottlenecks and they're increasing their throughput, which means they're generating more revenue, and basically none of the other costs go up. So actually we're just opening up and doing more. And that is really what we're trying to do for our customers. And therefore today we're very focused on finding customers who have an existing job basket that could benefit overnight from Highcon. It's great that they can also win incremental work. But if the business case for investment is predicated upon jobs that aren't in the basket, then it's an unknown climb up what could be a pretty tough mountain. Yes. Whereas when there is, when you've got a plateau of work that pays for the equipment and keeps the machine running for, say, a shift and a half or 2 shifts, then there's instant ROI with upside, and that's the win-win. And that's the kind of customer we're looking for, because then it's transformational on their business. We had a customer in the US who put on Instagram that they had reinstated rush jobs. They had stopped doing rush jobs because simply they didn't have the capacity, they couldn't mess up their queuing by accelerating jobs through the process because of bottlenecks and finishing. With the Highcon, we're back to offering rush orders. And that's, I saw that and it was heartwarming, because this means that Highcon was directly impacting our customers' ability to service their own customers. And that's what it's about. When it's just kind of transforming jobs, it's important. When you actually see the customer able to offer new value propositions to the market, that means we're doing something right.
Absolutely. Very good. Very good. Okay, so finally, how can people contact you and find out more about Highcon and what you do?
Okay, it's pretty straightforward. First of all, www.highcon.net is our website. You can reach us through that. I'm sure you'll put out my email on the screen, simon.lewis@highcon.net. We have a few folks on the ground in Europe, but the best thing is to reach out to our headquarters and we'll make sure we connect you with somebody if you're in the countries that we're serving. We are not serving a worldwide market right now, but if it's, as I said, if it's Europe, UK, North America, then that's where we are today. And over the coming years, we're going to expand our geographic footprint.
Excellent. Simon Lewis, Vice President Marketing at Highcon, thank you very much for your time.